The world fears solitude, but those who master it become unshakable from the inside out. Have you ever felt uneasy when you're truly alone? The kind of silence that presses in, the kind of emptiness that reveals everything you've hidden beneath the noise? That discomfort doesn't come from solitude itself. It comes from being face to face with the parts of yourself you've ignored. And it's in that raw honesty that your power is forged. Most people fear being alone not because of solitude itself, but because of what it reveals when the noise of the world fades. All that's left is you, your thoughts, your fears, your regrets, your dreams. And that's exactly why most people run from it. But what if I told you that being alone is not a curse? It's a power that once embraced can transform your mind, your confidence, and your entire life. If you stay till the end of this video, you will learn something most people never realize. Solitude is not weakness. It is the birthplace of strength. Why do we fear solitude from childhood? We are conditioned to believe that being alone is a problem. Society makes us think that if we're not constantly surrounded by people, something is wrong with us. Social media tells us that happiness means being liked, being followed, being validated. We've been programmed to believe that being alone is being unwanted, but that is a lie. The truth is those who fear being alone are afraid of their own mind. They don't want to sit in silence because in that silence, they are forced to face who they really are. But here's the secret. Facing yourself is the key to mastering your life. The first step to self-discovery. Think about this. How can you ever understand yourself if you are never alone with your thoughts? If you are always distracted, always occupied, always running from? Solitude is where real self-awareness begins. It is in the quiet moments that you start to understand your desires, your ambitions, your weaknesses, and your strength. It is in solitude that your mind awakens. But most people never experience this because they are afraid. Afraid of what they might discover. Afraid of confronting their insecurities. Afraid of realizing they've been living a life based on other people's expectations. And that's why so many people feel lost. They don't know what they want because they've never taken the time to ask themselves. The mind becomes strong in solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of self. The greatest minds in history understood this. They didn't fear being alone. They embraced it. They knew that solitude is where deep thinking happens. It's where creativity is born. It's where real strength is built. When you learn to be alone, you gain something. Most people will never have mental independence. You stop needing approval. You stop craving validation. You stop being controlled by the opinions of others. Because here's the truth. The person who is comfortable being alone is the most powerful person in the world. Why? Because they are free. The reward of embracing solitude. Imagine this, waking up in the morning with a clear mind, not worried about what others think, not needing anyone to tell you who you are. Imagine feeling completely at peace with yourself. Imagine having the mental strength to walk your own path without fear, without hesitation. This is the power that solitude gives you. Most people will never experience it because they will always seek distractions. They will always run from silence. They will always fear being alone. But if you choose to embrace solitude, you will unlock something extraordinary. You will develop a mind that is unshakable. You will gain a strength that no one can take away from you. You will become someone who doesn't need the world's approval, because you have your own. And this is just the beginning. Stay with me, because as this video continues, you will learn how solitude can turn you into the strongest version of yourself. You will discover how being alone can unlock your potential, awaken your true self, and give you the kind of power most people never even realize exists. Are you ready? Because what comes next will change the way you see solitude forever. Most people never realize how much noise surrounds them. The constant voices, the endless opinions, the distractions pulling their attention in every direction. They spend their lives reacting to the world, never stopping to listen to the one voice that matters most, their own. But when you are alone, something incredible happens. The noise fades, the distractions disappear, and for the first time you can hear your own thoughts clearly. This is where the mind awakens. Solitude gives you the space to think deeply, to question, to reflect. In these moments of silence, your mind starts to organize everything you've ignored. Your emotions, your ambitions, your fears, your strengths. You begin to see patterns in your life that you never noticed before. You start understanding what truly matters to you. That this is why most people fear being alone. Because in that silence there are no excuses, no distractions, no one to blame. It's just you and the truth. And that truth can be uncomfortable. It can reveal weaknesses. It can expose insecurities. But it also holds the key to your power. If you can sit alone without distractions, without running from yourself, you will discover something most people never find. Absolute mental clarity. Think about the greatest decisions of your life. Did they come from chaos? Or did they come in a moment of deep thought? Every great breakthrough, every powerful realization comes from solitude. But most people never allow themselves to experience this. They drown in distractions. They avoid silence. They choose noise over clarity, comfort over truth. But the ones who embrace solitude, they are the ones who rise. They are the ones who control their minds instead of being controlled by the world, because in solitude your mind doesn't just rest. It sharpens, it grows stronger. It becomes a weapon that no one can manipulate. And once you unlock that power, you will never fear being alone again. Most people go through life without ever truly knowing themselves. They follow routines, chase approval, and live by expectations that are not their own. They become a reflection of the world around them, rather than an expression of who they really are. But when you are alone, truly alone, you begin to see yourself clearly. Solitude is the mirror that reflects your true self. If first it might feel uncomfortable when the distractions are gone, your mind starts asking questions. Who am I? What do I truly want? Am I living my life or someone else's? These questions can be unsettling because they force you to confront the truth about your fears, the truth about your weaknesses, the truth about the dreams you've buried under obligations and expectations. But this discomfort is a gift, because the moment you face yourself, you take the first step toward transformation. Most people never do this. They avoid solitude because they don't want to confront their doubts, their regrets. So they stay busy, stay distracted, and stay lost. But those who embrace solitude, they become unshakable, because once you understand yourself, no one can define you, no one can manipulate you, no one can tell you who to be. Because you already know solitude. Strips away the illusions and leaves you with one thing, the truth, and the truth is, you are stronger than you think, you are capable of more than you believe. But you will never realize this if you never take the time to sit with yourself in silence and listen. When you stop fearing solitude, you start discovering your power, and that is when your life begins to change. Most people live on the surface, reacting, rushing, doing. They never stop to think deeply, to question, to reflect. They are consumed by distractions, moving from one thing to the next, without ever asking themselves, why am I doing this? Where am I going? But when you are alone, something shifts, the noise fades, and your mind is free to go deeper. This is where true intelligence is developed. This is where breakthroughs happen, because deep thinking is a power most people never use. When you allow yourself to sit in solitude, your thoughts slow down. You begin to connect ideas, to see solutions that were once hidden. You gain clarity, not just about the world, but about yourself. Your desires become clearer. Your priorities sharpen. You stop following what everyone else is doing and start carving your own path. But most people never experience this. They fear the silence, so they fill it with meaningless noise. They drown in distractions, never giving their mind the space it needs to think beyond the ordinary. This is why so many people feel lost. They don't lack intelligence. They lack time alone with their own mind. They are too busy keeping up with the world to ever stop and ask, what do I really want? What do I truly believe? Great ideas, powerful decisions, and life-changing realizations don't come from noise. They come from solitude. Every invention, every masterpiece, every major breakthrough in history started with someone who dared to sit alone and think. When you embrace solitude, you unlock your mind's greatest potential. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. You stop living by default and start living by design. Because once you learn to think deeply, you will never again be controlled by shallow distractions. And that is when real power begins. Most people rely on others to regulate their emotions. They seek comfort and distractions, validation from others, and approval from the world. When they feel empty, they look for something or someone to fill the void. But what happens when no one is there? What happens when you have to face your emotions alone? This is where true strength is built. Emotional strength is not developed in crowds. It is developed in solitude. When you are alone, there is no one to lift you up, no one to reassure you, no one to distract you from your own pain. And at first, this feels unbearable. You start noticing emotions you've ignored: fear, sadness, frustration, regret. But instead of running, you sit with them, you feel them, you understand them. And this is where transformation begins. Because emotions are not enemies, they are teachers. Solitude forces you to process what you've been avoiding. It teaches you resilience, patience, and self-control. It strengthens your ability to stand tall, even when no one is cheering for you. It builds a mind that does not break. Under pressure, most people never reach this level of strength because they avoid the discomfort of being alone. They surround themselves with people hoping to escape their inner struggles. But real confidence doesn't come from external support. It comes from knowing you can stand on your own. When you master solitude, you master yourself. You stop relying on others to make you feel whole. You stop fearing loneliness because you understand that being alone does not mean being empty. It means being in control. And once you reach this level of emotional strength, nothing can break you. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They fill every moment with noise, music, conversations, social media, endless distractions. They believe silence is empty, boring, or even threatening. But that belief is wrong. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is power in a world that never stops talking. Those who master silence gain an edge, because in silence, something remarkable happens. You start hearing what truly matters. You hear your thoughts without interference. You hear the emotions you've been avoiding. You hear the inner voice that has been drowned out by the world's opinions, and that voice, that is the real you. Silence gives you clarity. Think about it. When was the last time you truly sat in silence? No distractions, no background noise, just you alone with your thoughts. If that idea makes you uncomfortable, it means you've been avoiding yourself, and that is exactly why you need it. Because silence is where wisdom grows. It is where the greatest minds find their ideas. It is where strength is developed, where self-awareness is sharpened. When you embrace silence, you learn to think before reacting. You learn to observe before speaking. You develop patience, discipline, and control over your own mind. Most people fear silence because they fear facing themselves. But those who learn to sit in silence without restlessness, they become unstoppable. They do not waste words. They do not seek unnecessary validation. They listen more, understand more, and see what others. Miss silence is not weakness. It is mastery. And those who master it hold a power that the noisy world will never understand. Most people confuse being alone with being lonely. They think solitude is a sign of emptiness, of isolation, of something missing. But that's a misunderstanding. Loneliness is a craving for others. Being alone is an embrace of oneself. Loneliness feels like a void, a painful longing for connection, for someone to feel the silence. It comes from dependency, from needing external validation to feel complete. But being alone, that is a choice, a strength, a state of fullness, not emptiness. When you are truly comfortable being alone, you do not seek people out of need. You do not fear silence. You do not feel incomplete without a crowd. Instead, you enjoy your own company. You use solitude to think, to grow, to strengthen yourself. The difference between loneliness and being alone is mindset. A weak mind fears being alone because it hasn't learned how to be independent. A strong mind sees solitude as an opportunity, a time to focus, to build, to master emotions without relying on anyone else. Loneliness is a burden. Solitude is a power. Think of the strongest, most unshakable people. You know, do they constantly surround themselves with noise and distractions, or do they carry an energy that feels whole? Even in silence, the strongest people do not avoid solitude. They embrace it because they do not fear their own mind. When you shift your mindset, being alone stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like freedom. You stop waiting for others to make you feel complete. You stop craving approval. You realize that everything you need is already within you. And once you understand that you will never feel lonely again, most people think confidence comes from external validation, attention, compliments, approval from others. But that kind of confidence is fragile. It disappears. The moment people stop clapping, real confidence doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. And solitude is where it is built. When you spend time alone, without distractions, without people telling you who to be, something powerful happens. You stop relying on the world to define you. You stop seeking permission to be yourself. You start discovering your true worth. Confidence is not about being the loudest in the room. It's not about proving yourself to others. It's about knowing deep inside that you don't need validation to feel strong. And the only way to reach that level is by facing yourself. In solitude, most people never do this. They surround themselves with people because they fear their own thoughts. They chase approval because they don't trust their own decisions. But those who embrace solitude, they develop a different kind of confidence, one that cannot be shaken when you learn to be alone. You learn to trust yourself. You start making decisions without doubting yourself. You start believing in your own abilities without needing constant reassurance. You walk into any situation with a quiet strength because you know who you are. That is real confidence, and it is rare. Most people will never find it because they will always look outside themselves for validation. But those who embrace solitude, they become unshakable. They don't beg for approval. They don't follow the crowd. They lead, and once you build that kind of confidence, no one can take it away from you. Most people never reach their full potential, not because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunities, but because they are constantly distracted. They spend their lives following the noise, adjusting to the expectations of others, and losing themselves in the process. But solitude changes everything. When you are alone, you finally have the space to focus on yourself, to grow, to improve, to evolve. Think about it. Every skill you've ever mastered, every moment of real progress in your life came when you had time to focus without distractions. The most successful people in history, artists, inventors, leaders, understood this. They weren't afraid to separate themselves from the crowd. They embraced solitude because they knew that's where their best work was born. When you are alone, you have the freedom to explore your passions. You can think without interruption. You can push yourself without worrying about judgment. You can dedicate time to your goals without the opinions of others slowing you down. But most people never do this. They fill their time with meaningless interactions, numbing entertainment, and constant social validation. They waste their potential because they are too afraid to step away and work on themselves. But those who embrace solitude, they rise above the rest. They use their alone time to sharpen their skills, to build discipline, to create something meaningful. They don't need distractions to feel alive. They don't need approval to keep going. They build themselves in silence, and when they finally emerge, they are unstoppable. This is why solitude is not a weakness. It is a gateway, a path that leads to mastery, to greatness, to a version of yourself that most people will never have the patience to become. And once you step onto this path, your life will never be the same. Most people let the world control their thoughts. They absorb opinions, follow trends, and react without questioning. Their minds are filled with external noise, leaving little room for their own independent thinking. But when you embrace solitude, you take back control. You train your mind to become stronger, sharper, and more resilient in solitude. You learn to sit with your thoughts without distraction. At first, it's uncomfortable. You might feel restless, anxious, even overwhelmed. But if you push through, something powerful happens. You start developing mental discipline. Discipline is what separates the weak from the strong. Most people lack it because they never challenge themselves to sit in silence. They need constant stimulation to feel comfortable. But those who master solitude, they develop an unbreakable mind. When you spend time alone, you sharpen your focus. You gain control over your emotions. You stop reacting impulsively and start thinking deeply before making decisions. You become mentally tough, able to handle challenges without breaking, able to stand firm, even when life gets difficult. This is what makes strong people different. They don't need the world's approval to feel confident. They don't need distractions to escape their thoughts. They train their minds in silence, so that when the world tests them, they do not falter. If you can sit alone with your thoughts without reaching for distractions, you are already stronger than most, because mental strength isn't built in comfort. It's built in solitude. And once you master your mind, nothing can control you. Nothing can shake you. Nothing can stop you. Most people depend on others for their happiness, their confidence, their motivation. They wait for encouragement, for someone to push them forward, for someone to tell them they are good enough. But this kind of dependence makes them weak, because the moment those people leave, they fall apart. But solitude teaches a different lesson: the power of self-reliance. When you spend time alone, you are forced to rely on yourself for everything. Your strength, your motivation, your discipline. It all comes from within. There is no one to lift you up when you feel down, no one to push you when you feel lazy, no one to tell you what to do. It's just you. At first, this is difficult. You may feel lost. You may doubt yourself. But the more you embrace solitude, the more you realize you don't need anyone else to validate you. You don't need external motivation to take action. You become your own source of strength. This is the mindset of the truly powerful. They don't wait for others to inspire them. They inspire themselves. They don't wait for permission to take action. They make their own decisions. They don't fall apart when people leave. They remain whole because they have built themselves from within. Most people never experience this because they are too afraid to be alone. They cling to relationships, to distractions, to anything that keeps them from facing themselves. But those who embrace solitude, they become unstoppable. Because once you learn to rely on yourself, you will never need to depend on anyone. Again, most people are easily influenced. Their moods shift based on other people's opinions. Their confidence crumbles when they face criticism. Their decisions are shaped by fear, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of standing alone. But those who embrace solitude, they become untouchable. When you spend time alone, you stop being controlled by the outside world. You stop needing validation. You stop caring about meaningless opinions. You realize that most of the things people chase, approval, attention, popularity, are nothing but illusions. They hold no real power over you unless you allow them to. Solitude teaches you how to stand firm in who you are. You don't sway with every opinion. You don't break. Under pressure, you develop an internal stability that no amount of criticism, failure, or rejection can shake. This is why strong people don't fear being alone. They use solitude as a weapon, a tool to build a mind so solid, so unshakable, that nothing can break them. Think about it. The people who are the hardest to manipulate, the hardest to bring down, the hardest to control, are the ones who don't rely on the world to define them. They don't beg for acceptance. They don't chase approval. They know who they are, and that makes them powerful. When you learn to be alone, you free yourself from the need to fit in. You stop explaining yourself. You stop adjusting to make others comfortable. You realize that your value isn't determined by how many people like you. It's determined by how unshakable you are in your own skin. And once you reach that level, you become truly unstoppable. Most people live reactively. They wake up and immediately get pulled into the chaos of the world. Notifications, opinions, distractions. Their time is consumed by others, their energy drained by meaningless interactions, their minds cluttered with outside influences. They are not in control of their own lives. They are being controlled. But solitude changes this. When you embrace being alone, you take back your power. You regain control over your time, your focus, your decisions. Think about it. How much of your day is spent on things that don't truly matter? How often do you get sidetracked by people, conversations, or tasks that add no real value to your life? Solitude removes the unnecessary. It forces you to prioritize when you spend time alone. You stop being pulled in 100 directions. You think clearly, you act with purpose. You decide what deserves your attention instead of letting the world decide for you. You become intentional, and that is what separates those who succeed from those who don't. Successful people control their time. They guard their energy. They do not let the noise of the world dictate their actions. This is the power of solitude. It forces you to take responsibility, to focus on what truly matters, to eliminate distractions and move toward your goals with complete clarity. Most people waste their lives reacting, but those who embrace solitude, they take control. They lead, they build, they create. Because once you master being alone, you stop living on autopilot and start living with purpose. Most people avoid solitude because they think it makes them weak. They believe strength comes from being surrounded by others, from constant interaction, from always being in motion, but they fail to see the truth. Real strength is built in silence, in discipline, in the moments no one is watching. When you embrace solitude, you do what most people are too afraid to do. You face yourself. You confront your weaknesses, your doubts, your insecurities, and instead of running from them, you work on them. You sharpen your mind. You build resilience. You become the kind of person who thrives even when no one is there to support you. Weak people need distractions. Strong people embrace discomfort. Most people seek comfort in noise, in relationships, in anything that keeps them from sitting alone with their thoughts. But those who truly understand the power of solitude, they use it as fuel. They turn loneliness into focus. They turn isolation into discipline. They use their alone time to become so strong, so unshakable, that nothing can break them. And when they return to the world, people can sense it. They walk with a different energy, one of quiet confidence, of control, of inner power, because they have built themselves in silence. This is why solitude is not something to fear. It is something to master. Because once you learn to stand alone, you will realize you are stronger than you ever thought possible. Everything in life changes when you embrace solitude. You stop fearing silence. You stop seeking validation. You stop depending on others to feel strong, because you have built yourself in the moments no one else could see. Most people will never understand this power. They will chase distractions. They will run from solitude, filling every empty space with noise, with people, with anything that keeps them from facing themselves. But those who master being alone, they rise above the rest. They develop an unshakable mind, a deep sense of purpose, a confidence that cannot be broken. They do not fear rejection because they do not need approval. They do not fear failure because they have learned to stand up on their own. They do not fear being alone because they have realized something most people never will. Being alone is not a weakness, it is a power. The world belongs to those who can stand alone, because they are not controlled by distraction. They are not weakened by opinions. They are not afraid to walk their own path. And once you step into this power, nothing can stop you.